This is Business and Economy. I am Ile Emeje. The Federal Executive Council, FEC, has approved a total of 2.3 trillion naira stimulus plan for the Nigeria Economic Sustainability Group, a committee headed by the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osibanjo. This is aimed at mitigating the current economic challenges occasioned by the historic COVID-19 and the global economic downturn in crude oil price. On today's program, we shall be looking at the implementation of this plan in relation to reducing or completely eradicating unemployment problems in the country. Our guest is a macroeconomic policy analyst, Professor Ken Ife. He will be joining us after the business news. Stay with us. President Muhammadu Buhari has reiterated more commitment to the West African Monetary Union with the right fundamentals, guaranteeing credibility, sustainability, prosperity and sovereignty, while expressing displeasure at once by Francophone West Africa to adopt the new eco-currency over the CFA. This was made available on the president's Twitter handle, noting that it calls for concern that a people with whom to go into a union are taking major steps without adequate discussion. The presidency called for collective and effective communication from the region for expediencies, saying that much has been invested in the project. He further urged the region to observe with caution and comply with the agreed process of reaching collective goal while treating each other with utmost respect, adding that strategies on monetary union should be of utmost consideration. The federal government has unveiled plans to create and save not fewer than 5 million jobs from its post-COVID-19 economic recovery plans. The minister, Otumba Adeniyi Adebayo, disclosed this in Abuja, saying that arrangements are underway to save about 1.4 million jobs of Nigerians, with 40% in female-owned micro, small and medium enterprises, MSMEs, and 10% belonging to people with special needs. The minister explained that the move was part of the ministry's input in playing a leading role in the federal government's delivery of real sector interventions of its economic sustainability plan in the wake of the global pandemic. Otumba Adebayo noted that this will enhance continued operations and increase in production capacity towards priority sectors and protect micro, small and medium enterprises from the shocks of the pandemic. Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, has announced the disbursement of 49 billion naira out of the 50 billion naira targeted facility for households and small businesses to over 80,000 families and households. This was disclosed by the CBN Director of Corporate Communications, Mr. Isaac Okorafor, while speaking during a program noting on measures and policies aimed at making sure that Nigeria economy does not slip back into recession due to the coronavirus pandemic and low oil prices. The director said that the CBN would ensure that small businesses that employ 2 or 3 people and account for most of the jobs in the country will continue to do their businesses without allowing the coronavirus pandemic to affect them, against pushing the nation into crisis. Mr. Okorafor stressed that the Apex Bank would always work against smugglers, round trippers, and chronic debtors in the banking system, and those importing non-essentials into the country, and forex speculators who see the bank as their enemies. Mr. Okorafor also pointed out that the Central Bank of Nigeria has a 1 trillion naira fund for the manufacturing sector aimed at boosting the productivity level of the country. The Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment has inaugurated a 28-member Nigeria Agro Setup Committee aimed at reinvigorating the broad national agriculture activities across the country. This was made known in Abuja by the Permanent Secretary, Dr. Sani Gwarzo, in a statement, urging members to collaborate with relevant government agencies in facilitating the purchase, certification, and transportation of agricultural commodities from the farms to the points of exit. The Permanent Secretary explained that, in line with the diversification agenda of this administration, the committee will serve as a reference point for coordinating activities that will fast-track the Nigeria agriculture export business. The Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC) has cautioned stakeholders and the investing public about the activities of an illegal blockchain operator as part of measures aimed at safeguarding the investing public from illegal and fraudulent operations in the capital market. This was made available in the recent circular released by the Securities and Exchange Commission to capital market operators and investing public, noting that the activities of IB Smartify Nigeria is not under the control of SEC. The circular disclosed that neither promoters of IB Smartify Nigeria nor illegal products they offer are registered or regulated by the Commission. In view of this, Securities and Exchange Commission is calling on the general public, saying that anyone dealing with the said entity and others in the same businesses in any manner whatsoever does so at his or her own risk. Welcome back. Going into the discussion, the guest, who is a macroeconomic policy analyst, Professor Ken Ife, is now in the studio. You are welcome to the program, Prof.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
All right. Prof, you are aware of the various intervention programs introduced by the federal government in order to cushion the impact of COVID-19 on the Nigerian economy. Please, can you take us through these various interventions for the benefit of our viewers out there?
Well, generally, let me say that all over the world, governments are all responding with various intervention programs, and the size of the intervention is related to the expected size of the impact on their economy, the size of the recession, the loss in output, the loss in aggregate demand. So they are trying to relate those. America put 3.3 trillion, which is 15% of their GDP. UK put $330 billion, 15% of their GDP. Japan, 20% of their GDP. Germany, 60% of their GDP. So Nigeria, we have from central bank about 3.5 trillion. From the fiscal authority, the one you started with is 2.3 trillion. Add them together, just over 6 trillion. And then that's about a little over 5% of our GDP, 5 to 6% if you add everything of our GDP. So we still have some mileage. And then to take into the detail, the CBN started early. And then you had quantitative and qualitative response. First of all, they had to make sure that the financial sector is stable so that health crisis does not transfer to the financial crisis. They brought out the first 50 billion naira to the National Microfinance Bank, say quick disbursement, household, MSMEs, and that's moving. Then they also now came and have 100 billion for the pharmaceutical sector and medical, because that's where the heat is at the moment. And we are even having problems importing drugs and APIs, active pharmaceutical ingredients. Then they put 1 trillion of that 3.5 trillion for manufacturing sector, agriculture, so real sector to borrow. Then, of course, there is also they floating a new infrastructure company called Infraco that will require 15 trillion. They want to raise 15 trillion in capital so that they can move it to infrastructure, and take it over from government. And then that will also reduce government external borrowing. But that is in the works. So that's what is going on at the CBN level. Then at the fiscal level, you have the sustainability, the economic sustainability in plan that they're now asking for 2.3 trillion. And of course, all these monies, the first 500 billion was being sourced from different accounts of the MDAs, collecting. There are lots of monies everywhere, pots of money, so they are pulling them together for that first 500 billion. Then 1.2 trillion of that money too, they are getting from CBN, But then there is also the remaining 700 billion divided into two. Some are coming from development finance, development intervention, development partners, and then there's other ones. So there are sources of money that are bringing. They're going to go for some domestic borrowing as well. So all of those make up the 2.3 trillion. But I must say that part of the expenditure, the first 500 billion, is actually meant to go to massive job creation. You've seen government saying they want 1,000 jobs in each local government.
Yeah.
And there are 774 local governments.
Yes.
So they are looking for 774,000 jobs.
Yeah.
But I think it's like 3 months kind of job just to take a little hit of them. But that's going on. And other MDAs, within the sustainability plan, there are projects and programs that from different sectors that are expected to benefit from this money. And the whole target is employment-intensive
it's employment-driven policies.
Yes.
Okay. The National Economic Sustainability Group, set up by President Muhammadu Buhari and headed by the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osibanjo, is to achieve, among other objectives, the development of a clear economic sustainability plan in response to challenges posed by COVID-19 and to propose a clear-cut strategy to keep existing jobs as well as creating opportunities for new ones. These are just two of the mandates for the group. Can you now tell us what effect can this make on the Nigerian economy?
It will, tremendously, because what has happened with the COVID-19 is that the first thing was supply shock coming from China, and that affected our manufacturing sector and everybody around the world. And the second shock now came from locking down, which also threw a lot more people out of their jobs because they no longer, economic activity was frozen in those states, key target states. And the wise government is paying salaries to their staff, but don't forget that government is only 5.7% of household consumption. If you look at, the GDP, the household consumption is 84% of our GDP. Government sector is only 5.7%.
Yeah.
So, which means that the employees of government are very small compared to that of the household. The whole industry is almost 60 million jobs. So the government sector is very small proportion of that. So what happens is that we need to reach out to the private sector to ensure that we can energize them to get back. And of course, it's all part of the debate of how we reopen, the methodology for reopening in the safest possible manner so that you can decrease mortality, COVID-19 mortality. So the thing is, so you have two measures. One measure is to create new opportunities. But having said that, actually, there are opportunities coming from COVID because you can see more intense use of technology. And the technology businesses are doing really well.
I don't think this impact is affecting
our
them at all.
own has gone from 9% of the GDP, the ICT sector, to 15% of the GDP. It's huge growth, 50%. And if I can give you an example, you know Zoom that we use?
Yeah, Zoom.
In December last year, their turnover was just over $600 million. 5 months down the line in this year, it went up to $48 billion.
Wow.
You can see. In fact, they have more turnover now than the 7 biggest airlines. So it's huge. So there are new opportunities coming. And some of these opportunities are actually good for the nation because you're now having much more meetings in lesser, you don't need to travel.
So how can we take hold on some of these opportunities?
Yes, that's what we are coming to. Then, of course, there is the other area, which is the job protection from redundancies.
For the existing,
And then, initially, the House of Assembly, House of Representatives, passed the law that private sector should be encouraged to retain the jobs and then recoup some of those from tax rebates. So I think government is responding positively to that. And that stops a lot of people from being thrown out of job, even if it is at half of their salary. But let them be held up there.
At least, given the economic situation here.
Because one, we have over 80 million people in Nigeria below the poverty line, 40.1% of our population. So this whole crisis is adding another 5% to the people who are below the poverty line. So we need to fight it, and that's the way. So those are the two ways government is fighting it: protecting the jobs as much as possible, and then creating new jobs. And for example, the 704,000 employment and some others. Employment-intensive programs are being encouraged to create jobs.
Oh, that is a great
But then
one.
focus on building self-sufficiency and reducing our dependence on export, because we have serious challenges on forex.
Yes, I was going to ask you, apart from these two functions of the Nigerian Economic Sustainability Group that I mentioned while in the course of the introduction, do they have other responsibilities that will look into the area of encouraging local manufacturing of items?
Okay.
So that is made in Nigeria goods.
Yeah, of course. When I said 1 trillion of this money from CBN was actually heading there. And in fact, just as we are speaking, CBN has spent over 350 billion naira on the 10 agricultural value chain. There's what they call 10 presidential agricultural value chain, which is tomato, rice, cassava, oil palm, cotton, poultry, fish, aquaculture, livestock. They pour that money to the chain. Millions of hectares are going to be grown this year in rice, in maize. So they're pouring the money. So what they are doing here is that they are not only providing for food security, but they are producing a lot of materials for industry, industrial raw materials. Right. So that's very significant.
Okay.
And they're pouring this money down the drain. And they're looking at about 1 trillion in the end of the day.
1 trillion naira.
Yeah, in the end of the day.
All right. We'll take a break now and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is Business and Economy, and our guest is an analyst and a professor of macroeconomics, Professor Ken Ife. We have been looking at the approval of 2.3 trillion naira by the Federal Executive Council for the Nigerian Economic Sustainability Plan Group in mitigating economic challenges from the coronavirus pandemic. Prof, the major concern of everyone is the allocation or disbursement of this stimulus on the various sectors, households and businesses. What should be the expectation of Nigeria?
Yeah, that's actually where the trouble lies.
Yes.
Disbursement. I know that much of the CBN monetary policy resources, intervention, development finance intervention, they are warehoused through the commercial banks. And you know that the initial 50 billion naira is coming through, is being disbursed by the National Microfinance Bank. Initially, they were slow, but now they have caught up to speed now.
You know, a lot of Nigerians have come up with complaints of inequitable disbursement of these palliatives.
Well, the palliatives are actually different because on the fiscal side,
the disbursement
the palliatives
of the
are more to do with the humanitarian area.
Okay, let's look at the
led by the humanitarian minister, because they started by unlocking 75,000 metric tons of grains and disbursing those, and then they increased the conditional cash transfer. More people are getting that, and all of those interventions and palliatives are really in that humanitarian side.
Okay.
But the monetary policy response are usually loan that you are borrowing, which you have to repay, except that the interest has been brought down from 9% to 5%, and you have moratorium to enable you get into revenue yielding before you can start paying.
Yes.
And even forbearance of banks, in restructuring some of the loans that they have. So they've granted those. So there are all those measures, but remember, is money that you have to pay back
Yes.
at some stage. That is not to say that the one of the fiscal, they are demand-led. And I know that they are asking different MDAs to come up with programs that are going to different ministries, departments, and agencies are being asked to come up with populist programs that are employment intensive and can generate. So they are working through those. And of course, the one that was very clear is 1,000 jobs in each local government, 774,000 jobs. Of course, that is more to do with public works, but that's the one that that has coming on stream right now.
Okay, looking still on the disbursement, you know that there has been allegation of downsizing and salary cut in the industry, that is the aviation industry, due to the lockdown, and this has called for concern from different quarters. Although the government has undertaken a simulation test last Saturday in preparation for flight resumption in the coming days, what is the place of the stimulus in averting possible job losses in this sector and from adding up to the general unemployment level?
Well, I do know that the aviation sector is making frantic efforts for their voice to be heard, both at the level of the CBN authorities and at the level of the Minister of Finance and both economic sustainability. And so they are raising their voices, and I strongly support the fact that they need more help, because not just because of them, the aviation industry itself, there is an ecosystem around aviation. If the size of the aviation is 1.2 trillion, there is about 2.6 trillion surrounding it. Companies, industry, hospitality industry, food industry, transport industry that surround them, that need to be, the whole of that ecosystem is almost 4 trillion. So it's very, very important. There's a knock-on effect. And also, if you look at business and finance, we can't move. If you can't move from Lagos from Abuja to Lagos, and if you can't move, how can you do the business? And the only way people from outside the world will come to Nigeria is through the air. Nobody's going to go to a 3 weeks shipping, and no, that's how they are coming in. And so we need to make sure that government really helps this sector. And the other situation that they have is that the ISF is a revenue fund, the IGR. They use their IGR for 100% of their funding. So they're not actually getting money from federal government. The implication of this is that they need help, otherwise they'll start laying off staff. They also support their pensioners.
That has a resultant effect.
Yeah, they have their pensioners. They pay their pensioners. Then they have, in fact, even their passenger charge, it was only 1,000 naira since 2011.
But I think
they are going to increase it now to 2,000. But that's still small, because if you notice, the other company, by Courtney, are charging 2,500 naira, for the same thing. So they need that. So, and the other point is that they spend a lot of money on capital projects, having to maintain all these airports. There are 22 airports. Only two are viable, Lagos and Abuja. The rest of them are not viable. So they are actually cross-subsidizing all the airports. And you can't close these airports down. How would the governor in Borno State, in Yobe, in all the conflict area, how would they come to Abuja or go to Lagos?
That,
you want them to go by road?
The minister stated on Saturday that this week they will just announce the resumption date for all of these flight
it's very
operations.
important, because without this airline, without these airports, economic activity will be frozen. It means me and you can't go home, wherever you call home.
All right. Thank you so much, Prof, for coming on this edition of Business and Economy. And this is how far we can go on today's program. Do not forget to stay safe by observing all precautionary measures. And we ask that you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.